My name is Justin, and for the past 3.5 years, I've been helping to build an organization called Slingshot Memphis. Slingshot's mission is to create a demonstrable reduction in poverty. On one hand, our approach is really complex. On the other, it's extremely simple. Slingshot is nothing more than a platform to ask the right questions. Nearly 52 years ago, in his final Sunday sermon, Dr. King said, "We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. The real question is whether we have the will." When I question whether I have the will, when I feel most broken, and when I have no idea what I'm doing, I tend to call Sharon Cash. Sharon's the kind of person that just knows things. Do you know anybody like her? Do you know anybody that just knows things? Sharon runs the Purdue Center of Hope, which is our city's largest shelter for women and children. And despite her hectic schedule, Sharon always makes time for others, including me. Sometimes we email, sometimes we chat over the phone, and every now and then we'll get together in her office for a quick bite to eat. One day, when I was feeling even more broken than usual, I called Sharon. "Sharon, do you have some time?" Sensing something was a bit different in my voice, after a pause, she asked, "What are you doing next Tuesday at 9 a.m.? Running a startup, I didn't have to look at my calendar to know that I was already double booked, but that did not matter. I'll be there. Tuesday came. I arrived at the Purdue Center of Hope to find one of Sharon's colleagues, April, standing at the front desk. "Good morning, April. I'm here to see Mrs. Cash." "I know, Justin. She sent me to welcome you. Follow me." I began following April down a long hallway. Now, I'd been down this hallway numerous times before, but this was different. And after a minute, April stopped in front of a closed door. She waited for me to catch up. And when I did, she opened the door, and when I stepped inside, in my entire life, I've never been more surprised. Sharon was nowhere to be found. Instead, there were 50 women who I'd never met, sitting in a perfect circle, waiting in complete silence for a guest. You see, there was one empty chair, and it was for me. For the next 2 hours, I listened to these women share their stories. Many of them shared stories about being abused and raped, trafficked, sold, thrown away, cold, hungry, and homeless. There was one woman, I will never forget her name, Mary. Mary said, were it not for the Purdue Center of Hope, that she would be dead. All of these stories had threads of resilience, faith, and yes, will. At some point during this most surreal experience, I felt a hand on my shoulder. And I didn't have to turn around to know that it was Sharon. And after every woman had a chance to share her story, I was asked to share mine. Spoiler alert, I cried. This was a pivotal moment in my life. You see, Sharon knew what she was doing when she extended this invitation. She knew that I, a 42-year-old white guy with way too much power and influence, needed to be more proximate. She knew that I needed to listen first and talk second. She knew that to be more urgent, I needed to be reminded who I was fighting for. She knew that I would never stop wondering about these women. And that such wondering would heavily inform my life and my work. And most important, she knew that if I aim to offer any value, I've got to ask the right questions. You see, over the years, Sharon has encountered many, many questions. Unfortunately, most of these questions have not been useful for Sharon or for the women and the children at the Purdue Center of Hope. It could have sounded something like this. Sharon, have you read the latest research? Purdue could adopt a different, more cost-effective approach to help your clients achieve safe and affordable housing. I have read the research, and yes, it's very promising. But to achieve similar outcomes, to justify changing our program, our community would need a sufficient supply of safe and affordable housing. If we were to adopt that approach, it would put these women, it would put Mary in harm's way. Sharon, did you hear the great news? Our foundation is granting more dollars than ever before. A huge gift would be such a win for Purdue right now. You should apply. Thanks for the heads up. But the red tape involved would stretch our staff even further. And I think that gift comes with some serious strings. And those strings would force us to alter what works. The Purdue Center of Hope and Mary will be stronger if we pass. Sharon, more of our neighbors need Purdue. When are you going to scale? When are you going to serve more people? Be very careful with that question. Without additional context, it is extremely dangerous. You are implying that the Purdue Center of Hope will have a greater impact if we serve more people sometimes. To be excellent, we have got to serve less people better. Sharon, I'm really trying to wrap my mind around your budget. Exactly how much do you spend on marketing? I'm happy to answer that question, but I hope that it comes with a recommendation that we spend even more. It is very hard raising meaningful dollars in this community, and you and I both know it's about to get way harder. Research says that it takes serious dollars to attract serious dollars. These illogical and dangerous questions have become so commonplace. We have had so much practice that we don't even think we're in the wrong. Fortunately, for the Purdue Center of Hope, Sharon's had a lot of practice too. And she sees our blind spots, and she won't allow them to hurt Mary. Other organizations are not so fortunate. Often, the wrong questions lead to bad decisions and a diminished impact. Please understand, I am not trying to cast judgment. For most of my life, I've been asking the wrong questions too. There are too many examples to count. Let me give you 3. First, since I was a child, faith has been a very important part of my life. I've been active in numerous churches, and I even went to seminary to see how the sausage is made. And for so long, I invested resources to support outreach with little to no understanding if it was making an impact. I naively assumed that the people in charge knew how to best allocate these resources. Did you know that some churches in our area spend more money on flowers and landscaping than creating a better quality of life for our neighbors like Mary? Do you think Mary knows this? In our city, there is a church on nearly every corner. With the right questions, we could unlock a tremendous amount of power. Second, throughout my career, I have been honored to work for multiple companies, and several of them have strongly encouraged me to participate in the company giving program. Now, I'm sure these resources were put to good use, but like so many people, I contributed without asking any questions. In retrospect, I should have. Where's the money go? When does it get there? Is it working? How? In our city, businesses, big and small, are enormous levers for change. With the right questions, we could optimize resources, helping both our neighbors and the bottom line. Finally, moons ago, when I left education to work in finance, I started making more money. And I decided to create a separate fund to manage our family's charitable giving. And I would ask my wife, how big do you think we can grow this fund over the next 5, 15, 20 years? This was the wrong question. I should have been asking, how can we leverage these dollars to create the most impact possible? I should have been asking, is it better to invest in our neighbors like Mary now or 10 years from now? I know what Mary would suggest. In our city, people and foundations have been stockpiling an inordinate amount of charitable dollars. With the right questions, we would relinquish more, multiplying our impact and creating more room for the next generation of smart and bold donors. Thanks to people like Sharon, I am on a new journey, discovering how the right questions can produce the right results. Of course, this journey comes with its own roadblocks. You see, like Sharon, I get questions too. Do you honestly believe you can measure poverty outcomes? Why Slingshot? We've been asking the same questions for years and they're working just fine for us. Last month, somebody said, "Who do you think you are?" These questions are designed to stall innovation and progress. Of course, roadblocks are not unique to the fight against poverty. For example, in the late 70s, researchers wanted to measure the advice that doctors were providing their patients. Specifically, they wanted to measure which doctor's advice was useful and which doctor's advice was not. This simple and powerful information has helped improve healthcare for all of us. Guess who thought this idea was crazy at the time? Doctors. Not all, but some. Some doctors even went on record saying, "You cannot measure what I do. This is art." Sad story. A doctor told my mom to chain smoke during pregnancy to make me smaller and easier to deliver. That's 9.5 pounds. Think about healthcare today. Thanks in large part to measurement, we have come so far. The point is this: like healthcare, there are things that we can and should measure to advance the fight against poverty. Yes, this involves part art and part science. Yes, this involves a margin of error, but we can know things. And knowing things really matters right now. Sharon, how do you and your team members incorporate evidence-based practices at Purdue? Sharon, to understand long-term success, long-term outcomes, how are you and your team staying in touch with these women and children after they leave Purdue's care? Sharon, what is the best way for us to understand Purdue's cliff effect or the number of people that Purdue can serve before Purdue's impact begins to fade? Sharon, the women and children at the Purdue Center of Hope are some of the most resilient human beings on the face of the earth. How are y'all leveraging their unique gifts and talents? These questions have helped Purdue identify what is working, what is not working, and what could work even better. One of Sharon's colleagues recently said, "These questions have changed how we think. To create a better quality of life for our neighbors like Mary, we have got to be more brave. Finding solutions that work and casting aside those that do not." My journey to discover the right questions has just begun, and I still question whether I have the will, and I still feel very broken, and at times I still have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm not alone. I've got Sharon Cash, and I've got Slingshot. As a matter of fact, I am joined by a growing movement of people and organizations hell-bent on asking the right questions and getting rid of poverty. Join us. Together we can change the way we change Memphis. Together we can change the way we change the world. Mary deserves nothing less.